Okay. That's okay. Where are you? Right here. What's the little pink thing on the right, upper right hand side? What's that say? Mute. But then there's little dots there too. We'll click on it, see what it says. Start video, rename, pin. Oh.
This is Steven. Can you guys hear me?
Can.
Yes.
Okay, I gotta somehow get this view fixed.
We can hear.
Hi, guys.
Cameron Phillips is on.
HP is here.
Eddie Poost is here.
Lynn is here.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to get this kicked off here. Thank you, committee members, for joining us here at the first Measure U meeting. Before we get started, I did want to start with our oaths for the newest members. Committee member Chanel, DePavon, Cosma, Derwin, and Thames. And if I butchered your name, please correct me. So with that, we can, if you can unmute yourself, or you're unmuted, excuse me. You'll just raise your right hand and repeat after me, and we'll start with our oaths here. I
declare.
Suzanne Cosma.
I, Tammy Chenault.
I'm Marianne Derwin.
do,
Holly Timmons.
do solemnly swear or affirm
solemnly swear or affirm
Do solemnly swear. I'm sorry.
that I will support and defend the Constitution
That I will support and defend the Constitution
of the United States
Of the
of the
United
United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and
and
the
the
Constitution
Constitution
of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
to the
to the
Constitution
Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take
take
this
this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that
that
I
I
will
will well and
faithfully
faithfully
discharge
discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the
the
duties
duties
that I'm about to
about to enter.
Congratulations. Thank you for doing your oaths.
Thank you.
And with that, we can get started with item 1, which is call to order. I'll call this meeting to order since we haven't appointed a chair yet. And with that, we'll do a roll call. Committee member Chanel,
present.
committee member Clark,
Present.
committee member Cortez de Pavon,
present,
committee member Durham,
Present.
committee member Cosma,
Present.
committee member Thames.
Present.
All members are present. And then we'll go next to item number 3, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you all please stand right and place your right hand over your heart, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance starting now. I pledge allegiance
To
To
the
the flag
United
of the United States of
America,
America,
to the republic,
for which it stands,
and
one nation, under God, indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you, committee members. Moving right into our nomination and election of Measure U Citizen Oversight Committee Chairperson and Vice Chair. I wanted to ask the committee to provide a nomination for a chairperson. So is there anyone who would like to nominate someone on the committee?
Let's see
I was thinking maybe somebody who has been here in the past that has experience.
I'll
I would-
volunteer. Oh, go ahead.
Well, if you're volunteering, go ahead. I would decline any. I have the experience, but I'm not a Robert's rule and et cetera person that knows that kind of thing.
So does that mean maybe Cosma is willing to do this?
Certainly I will. Thank you.
I nominate committee member Cosma.
I'll second.
Okay, that's a motion by committee member Thames, second by committee member Clark to appoint committee member Cosma as the chair for the Measure U Citizen Oversight Committee. Can we do a roll call? Committee member Chennault,
Yes.
committee member Clark,
Yes.
committee member Cortez,
Yes.
committee member Durham,
Yes.
committee member Cosma,
Yes.
committee member Thames.
Yes.
That motion passes 6-0 to appoint committee member Cosma as the new chair. So moving on to item number 4B, which is nominations for vice chair and election for a vice chair. Is there anyone that would like to make any nominations for the vice chair position?
I would like to nominate Sarah. Is she here?
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry, I can only see a few on my screen.
Sure.
Now I see you.
Okay, I heard a motion. Do we have a second on the floor?
I second. It's committee member Chenault, I second.
Thank you. Okay, motion by committee or chair Cosma and second by committee member Chennault to appoint committee member Cortez de Pavon as vice chair of the board. And I'm going to do a roll call now. Committee member Chennault,
Yes.
committee member Clark,
Yes.
committee member Cortez de Pavon,
Yes.
committee member Durand,
Yes.
committee member Cosma,
Yes.
committee member Thames.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 6-0 to appoint Sarah Cortez de Pavon as the vice chair. So with that, I can hand over the rights of chairing the meeting to the proper chair, Chair Cosma. If you'd like to move us on to the next item, item 5, you can call for public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're now for communications from the public. And City Clerk, do I read this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Anyone who wishes to address the Oversight Committee regarding items listed on the agenda and not on the agenda may do so at this time. Public comments are temporarily limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name when the chairperson calls for public comment. When you are recognized, you may proceed with your comments. The Oversight Committee is prohibited from taking action or discussing any item not appearing on the agenda. A member of the Oversight Committee may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. City Clerk, do we have any comments? Either e-comments or on the phone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do not have any e-comments, but I do recognize that there are several attendees in the meeting. And I just wanted to call out if there are anybody, or if there is anyone, excuse me, who would like to speak. Right now is the time to unmute yourself or raise your hand. So if you are here present at the meeting, right now is the time to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Seeing none, Madam Chair, there is no one present here to speak for public comment.
Oh, okay, thank you. We're now moving to item 6A, presentation from City Attorney regarding the Brown Act, Ordinance 1918, and scope of Oversight Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I'd like to apologize for the webcam not working. It seems to be disabled for panelists. I am not an expert in Zoom, although after a year of this pandemic, that's hardly an excuse. But if I can get it fixed, I will. But in the meantime, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for serving the city of Hemet by becoming members of the Measure U Citizen Oversight Committee. I want to introduce myself. My name is Steve Graham. I have the honor to serve as the city of Hemet as its city attorney. I've been asked to attend this meeting and give the presentation because, as the city clerk had mentioned, this is the first meeting for many members of the committee, and I'm sure there are going to be some questions about what the committee is, what its role is, and the rules that govern your conduct as part of the committee. The committee was established by ordinance of the city of Hemet, passed by the voters in November of 2016 as Measure U. As you all are aware, Measure U established a transactions and use tax for the city of Hemet. While that tax that was established is a general tax that could be used by the city for any purpose, the city council adopted two non-binding resolutions, numbers 4703 and 4731, that limit the use of Measure U proceeds to public safety costs. The purpose of the committee is to independently review and advise the city on its expenditure of proceeds generated from the transactions and use tax. The committee performs these duties by meeting at least twice per year to review and report to the city council at a notice public meeting on one, the city's proposed and actual expenditure of proceeds generated by the transaction and use tax, and two, a report on the annual audit completed by the city. Under Hemet Municipal Code Section 74-134, the revenue from Measure U is treated like any other general fund revenue, but the city also performs an AUP, or agreed upon procedures, that I'm sure the finance director will be able to explain more of if someone had questions, that reports on the Measure U revenue expenditures broken out for the use of the committee. Finally, I did speak about the rules that you'd be subject to, and the most important one is the Ralph M. Brown Act, which requires transparency in public meetings. Some of the most notable requirements are that the meetings of the Citizen Oversight Committee are required to be open to the public. So I'm sure that there are many members of the public in attendance at this meeting today. The committee meetings must have an agenda posted in advance and available online. And as the chair mentioned, the committee is incapable of acting on any item that is not on the agenda. So in order to give the public a fair opportunity to know what's going to be discussed and whether they want to attend, we have to give a description of what those items are on our agenda in advance. The public must be afforded a reasonable opportunity to speak at the meetings of the committee. And that was something that that just took place, where comments were solicited, and if anyone had comments, they had that opportunity to give them. The final and the one that is usually the newest to those who have not served on a city board or commission before is that you are limited on your ability to interact with each other now. So a quorum of the committee, which just means a majority. So for us on a 7-member committee like this, that means that no more than 4 or more. It looks like I got disconnected, but I'm back. Can you guys hear me? And you can see me.
I see you.
Thank you, IT department, for your service. I don't know what you did, but you did it. So where was I? Oh, So 4 or more of you are not permitted from this day forward to meet, hear, discuss, or deliberate any item under the jurisdiction of this committee outside of a noticed public meeting like this one. That means you can't gather at the coffee shop to talk about it. You can't get on a group teleconference call to talk about it. You can't do what are called serial meetings, which is the trickiest concept, whereby 4 of you talk in a series. So one talks to one, talks to one, talks to one, or through an intermediary. You can't use someone who's not on the committee to communicate with the other people on the committee. And perhaps the one that will cause you the most distress, your ability to interact with each other on social media is now limited as well. So, you're not allowed to like the posts of each other if they're about those items within the subject matter jurisdiction of this committee. So if one of you posts, so blessed, got to spend a great day at Lake Hemet fishing, that's fine. Go ahead, interact with each other, comment and like on it. But if one of you says the city doesn't spend enough money on public safety in this town, you're going to have trouble if you start liking each other's posts under the new laws that have come out. So that's the overview to get you guys familiar with your new role on the Citizens Oversight Committee. Again, thank you very much. If you ever have any questions, and I guarantee you at some point here, you are going to have some questions. The ordinance establishing your committee requires city staff to provide you with adequate resources to do your job. I am one of those resources. So if you have legal questions, feel free to send them to my office. We'll get them back to you as soon as we can. And thank you again for your service. Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Should I ask if there are any questions at this time?
I'm available to answer any questions the committee may have.
I have a quick one.
Okay.
Steve, this is Dick Clark, and I have been guilty. I am not a social media person, but my wife now tells me always to look when I am sending out emails or responding to emails, whether I'm responding to all or responding to one. And I've gotten my hand slapped more than a couple times for responding to all. Can you give me an update to make sure that that's still a no-no?
That is still a no-no. You'll notice when you get emails from staff, either it usually is accompanied by a little blurb at the bottom that requests that you not reply to all, or sometimes they'll even put you on the blind copy so that it's impossible for you to accidentally reply to all. Other issues you may have, members of the public who want their voice to be heard. Oftentimes, while they may send in public comment to the city clerk, they may sometimes send in public comment to all of you via email. And it's so tempting because, you're obviously involved citizens who care about this community. You want to respond to members that have questions or concerns. It's so easy just to hit that reply all and say, you know what, you are right. And that is something we're going to look into at the Measure U Citizens Oversight Committee, guaranteed member, and so I think that's the kind of thing you got to watch out for. So replying is fine. Reply all when it's a quorum, 4 or more, that's a no-no.
I'll try.
All right. If I could figure out a way to disable your reply all, I would, but I obviously I can't even get my camera working, so I don't know if I'm the right person to help you with technical difficulties.
Are there any other questions from the committee members?
One question on the replying. So let's say hypothetically a question comes out, it's sent to all of us, and is it appropriate for one person to reply all and go, thank you for your concern and consideration, and just leave it at that, a blanket statement where you've never taken a side?
That
you received it. That's it.
Sure. I have no legal concern with you replying to the person who sent it, thanking them for their comment, letting them know that, you'll consider it and look at it. I would still recommend you not reply all to everybody else.
Just the one.
And, you know, as a practical matter, sometimes when comments come in like that, they forget to include staff. And so another tidbit, this isn't legal advice, it's just practical advice. Sometimes it's a good idea to forward that email to the city manager or
Okay.
to whatever staff he's designated to assist the committee so that they can be prepared to give you whatever resources you need to form an informed opinion or answer about that question.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee members? It's a good time to ask.
I'm already here.
That's right. It's a good time to ask.
I have a question then. So you said that as far as meeting, we cannot all meet together, even if it's not for committee business. If we happen to be, like you said, you know, see anyone at the coffee shop, for example. I mean, there's no issue there, or
There has to be more than one coffee shop in Hemet. I've gone to more of them. But yeah, I mean, so as a practical matter, right? The law says here discuss, deliberate any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body, right? So can 4 of you all happen to be eating a fine breakfast at Angie's Diner one day, completely coincidentally? Why, yes, you could. It would not be strictly a legal problem. I would advise you, now that you are, you know, officials here in the sense that you guys are members of this committee, that you are explicitly subject to the Brown Act by the terms of the ordinance passed by the voters, that you be cognizant not just of the letter of the law, but of the appearance, right? And so, sure, could there be an innocent reason why a quorum of you happen to be in one place at one time? Of course there are. You're all civic minded. There's many events going on in town. I would just recommend that, you know, you be cognizant of appearances as well, and avoid even the appearance of an improper meeting. And that's the same advice we give to the city council, planning commission, everybody else.
Thank you.
And Steve, this is Suzanne, and I just want to clarify that if 3 or 4 of us happen to attend a city council meeting, I'm assuming we should not sit together.
You know, that's an excellent question. So there is an exception under the Brown Act for attendance at a noticed public meeting of another body of the agency, right? So a quorum is certainly welcome to come to city council meetings and to participate in the noticed public discussion that's going on at those council meetings. And in fact, at some point you may do so when the report from this committee is delivered. So that's a good question. Keep in mind when we're coming back to it, you know, I always encourage everyone to come back to what is the intent? What's the intent of the Brown Act? The intent of the Brown Act is not to have secret closed door discussions, right? So is the intent of the Brown Act offended by you going to a noticed public meeting of the most visible body of the city? Probably not, right? And in fact, I recognize several of you from your frequent visits to our city council meetings, and I appreciate your participation.
Okay, thank you. And are there any other questions, committee members?
I have one more.
Okay, good.
Okay, so some of us do attend Mayor Meyer's Coffee with Carly, but we're not discussing these issues. We're just listening to what's going on, and maybe we're voicing a different concern completely unrelated to Measure U. Is that still an appropriate place for us to go?
So while Coffee with Carly is certainly a well-publicized event and open to the public, it is not a Brown Act event, meaning no agenda is posted. Obviously, it's kind of free-flowing. It's an opportunity for members of the community to engage with the mayor and bring those concerns. I have not attended Coffee with Carly, although I've had coffee with the mayor. I can imagine that scarcely a meeting goes by where public safety is not discussed at some level, right? And keep in mind, the Brown Act doesn't say just you're prohibited from discussing, you're prohibited from hearing, right? So if there's 4 of you in a location hearing a matter under your jurisdiction, and that meeting was not noticed and public, then we could have an issue. So my recommendation would be, if that is the type of event, and you guys would know, you've obviously been, I suspect that public safety is a topic of discussion. I would recommend limiting attendance to 3 or fewer. And the mayor will understand. She knows the Brown Act backwards and forwards and is constantly reminding me of its provisions, not just the other way around.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all members of the committee. And thank you for your service. I certainly know going through audited financials is not my idea of a good time. I would definitely call this public service at its finest. Sorry, Lorena. I know it's lots of fun. Thank you.
Okay. I believe number 7, consent calendar is next, but we don't have any items on there. So City Clerk, do I just skip that one and go to number 8?
Yes, that is correct. Just for a template, we have consent on the agenda just for future reference. It may be placed on future agendas, but we can move on to item 8.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to item 8, discussion fiscal year 21-22 proposed Measure U budget.
So I'm just briefly going to take the mask off just to say hello to everybody. It's nice to see Chairwoman Cosma, Committee Member Clark, and then see the rest of you. I've had the opportunity to meet some of you individually, Committee Member Derwin. I know we've talked before, but it's really good to see everybody. I look forward to meeting you individually in person at some point. But for the time being, this will kind of have to do for now. I just wanted to provide an overview of how kind of this all works in terms of the staff side of it. Usually around this time of the year, around June, is when we will assemble all of the committee members to talk about the proposed expenditures for Measure U for the upcoming fiscal year. And so this is kind of the first half of what the city attorney mentioned in terms of reviewing the proposed expenditures for Measure U. Towards the end of the year, around the 4th quarter, there will be another discussion where we have conversations about what the actual expenditures were for the previous fiscal year. And in that time, we'll review the actual expenditures. We'll have an AUP that's currently completed at that time too. And so you'll receive a copy of the annual report, financial report, as well as an agreed upon procedures review by a separate auditor that will provide some more in-depth analysis about the expenditures and revenues for Measure U. So that's how it all shakes out. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kick off the presentation to talk about the proposed Measure U expenditures. And John Paul, could you please allow me to share my screen, please? I should be able to. No, it says I'm prohibited from sharing my screen. Okay, here we go. Okay. Yep. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Chris, this is Dick Clark. Am I back on?
I can see you.
Yes.
Okay, I have too many grandkids in the house, so I tried to do this outside, and our Hemet weather said my phone was too hot.
All right, so I want to provide a little bit of background on how we got here. I know some of the committee members are relatively new to the committee, so I wanted to provide the foundation for Measure U and how we got to where we are today. In July of 2015, the California State Auditor informed the City of Hemet that it had been selected for review under the High Risk Local Government Agency Audit Program. The program authorizes the state auditor to identify local government agencies that are at high risk for potential waste, fraud, abuse, or mismanagement, or that have major challenges associated with their economy, efficiency, or effectiveness. And I should clarify that when the state auditor came by, it was before my time, before a lot of our time. It wasn't because of potential waste, it wasn't because of fraud, it wasn't because of abuse, but it was primarily with respect to the fact that the city had ongoing budget deficits and it continued to essentially use all of its reserves to fund ongoing operations. So in August of 2016, the state auditor released their report, and within that report, it stated the following. Hemet is a high-risk city due to its financial and organizational risks. Specifically, Hemet's budget deficit has persisted for many years, and our projection indicates that it will continue through at least fiscal year 2019-2020, raising concerns about the city's ability to fund its services. Although the city developed a 5-year plan to address its deficit, inaccurate information and overly optimistic assumptions distort the validity of the city's projection. In addition, we identified inefficiencies in the city's management. And the report is available online. It's available through the state auditor's webpage. I think it's also linked on our city website as well. So you can see the history of the reports that they've provided to the city of Hemet. I'm happy to provide those if anybody would like those. During this same time, the city is required to have a separate independent financial audit completed. So obviously we talked about what the state auditor report listed, which I've included on the left-hand side of the image here. On the right-hand side is the narrative that was included within the city's independent financial audit. And so I'll just, I pulled this verbatim from the annual financial report, and it essentially states the general fund has suffered significant reductions in fund balance by $2.3 million from operations. These conditions raise concerns about the financial condition of the city's governmental activities and the general fund and impact on future operations of the city. So you essentially have the independent auditor of the city's annual financial reports mirroring and essentially saying the same thing that the state auditor said. And so based on the statements made by the state auditor, as well as the statements made by the city's independent auditor, two separate and independent agencies clearly identified the challenges within the city. And so that's, for some of you, you may recall the issues that the city dealt with a number of years ago. So this is really the crux of a challenge that the city grapples with now, and I should say that I'm sure the Oversight Committee will be grappling with this as well. In 2016, the Hemet voters were asked to authorize a 1% additional sales tax measure to add and enhance levels of public safety services. While this was a noble concept, an effort to enhance its level of services, this tax was clearly conveyed as one that would provide additional and enhanced public safety programming. So given the statements by the state auditor and the city's independent auditor, its structural deficit meant one clear thing. The city of Hemet could not afford the level of services it provided during the time that it asked voters to approve that sales tax measure. The city promoted the actions that it would take to add new and enhanced resources and levels of service, yet the city was unable to provide for the status quo in 2015 and 2016 without the use of reserves. So this key issue, which was clearly conveyed in the budget documents, which you can reference at any time, and the financial report, was not part of the public discussion. So as far as I can tell, the discussion that revolved around an enhanced levels of service, additional resources for public safety, did not address the fact that there was a $5 million deficit in the general fund. And we know that public safety is the biggest expense on the general fund side because they do run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There was no discussion about Measure U being used to offset the public safety costs in the general fund. So this is the clear dilemma that exists and has been going on for the last few years. This dilemma has manifested into a complex situation. The promising of additional personnel and upstaffing on the public safety side, while ignoring the fact that the city could not afford the levels of service it provided in 2016. So on a go-forward basis, the council and the Measure U committee should recognize that this problem will lead to questions from the public about expectations that were provided back in 2015 and 2016, and the reality of what can actually be afforded. And this is probably clearly identified in some of the actions we had to take last year with the projected decline in revenues as a result of the COVID pandemic. So that's really the foundation. Some of you, I know, Committee Member Clark and Chairwoman Cosma, I apologize. You all have heard that speech and that discussion for probably a few years now. So I apologize. I'm probably a broken record. And that is a conversation I've had with the council at publicly noticed meetings. So if anybody's heard me talk about the budget, it shouldn't be a surprise based on the fact that I did start off this conversation with that. So now I wanted to talk about the proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget and provide a little bit of context as to how we got to where we are today. This initially started back in January, the end of January, where the mayor and the council held a special meeting to discuss the priorities of the city. The council also held a follow-up discussion on February 26th to finalize the, I'll call it kind of the overarching priority goals for the city of Hemet. At the end of May, the council hosted a community town hall type meeting where we further engage with the community. And I know one committee member was there participating, actually two were there participating in that event, where we had the members of the public explicitly and specifically talk about the items that they would like to see on a go-forward basis for the city of Hemet. Concurrent to those conversations, the city manager's office did take the lead in planning for the fiscal year 21-22 budget, which is a program-based budget that I'll get into shortly. So based on the initial conversations with the mayor and the council, there were 5 overarching priority goals that emerged from the discussions with the council. Those include quality of life, which we summarized as to ensure that Hemet is safe, clean, attractive, and comfortable for all who live, work, and visit. Economic opportunity, to ensure that Hemet is a hub with access to quality jobs, shopping options, and a varied and sustained tax base. Community engagement, to connect and participate in a constant dialogue between members of the community, city staff, and elected officials to promote togetherness and positivity. Partnership and collaboration, to pursue partnerships that will increase the opportunities available to the community, including our business, unemployed, and youth populations. And then finally, organizational effectiveness, to identify the work needed inside the city organization to effectively provide services to the community and ensure financial stability. Based on those overarching priority goals, the council did host a community town hall, and these are some of the boards that were developed by members of the community. I think in total we had about 11 of these boards, and so staff took the excuse me, content of this information and we included it within the strategic plan of the city of Hemet. And so this is just an example of some of the comments that members of the community had when we talked about the priorities for the city of Hemet. The council really did prioritize getting feedback from the community and engaging with the community. And so that's why the city did host this meeting. So based on the discussion that was hosted, you'll see a couple pictures that are included on this slide. There were some key takeaways. Excuse me. So homelessness was a topic of a reoccurring theme across all of the groups, community cleanups, the physical and the visible appearance of the community. code compliance efforts, parks, continued engagement with the community, and then finally, infrastructure, including roadways, city facilities, and business systems. Collectively, these were the key themes that emerged from all of the conversations with the community members. The community members did have an opportunity to present all of their discussions that they hosted, and they did present those to members of the council as well as the remaining individuals that stayed around for the evening. So based on the feedback, based on the priority goals that were established, staff took the lead in developing the strategic plan and working with departments. You'll see that on this excuse me, slide, we've got an image of these. I think it's the second page of the strategic plan. For those that wish to see it, you can find it on the city's website. It was presented to the council last night, and so you're able to look at that as well. And then in addition to that, the draft budget, which we will be presenting tonight in terms of the Measure U side of it. That's the cover of the budget that was also presented to the council last night. And so those two documents were running concurrently at the same time, parallel tracks, to ensure that there was clear alignment between the fiscal year 21-22 budget as well as the strategic plan, because what's the point of having a strategic plan if you haven't aligned your resources with the priorities that have been established and identified? So based on the budget, which, like I mentioned, you can look at on the agenda page, which was presented last night. The budget process began with the running start based on the council discussions held in January and February, which concluded in May. It is a program-based budget, and just for context, program-based budgeting allows for budget information to be gathered around the city's programs and services. The budget will show the cost of a specific program and a method to evaluate the program's effectiveness and outputs through performance metrics that were also included in the strategic plan. We believe that organizing the information in this manner, instead of at the departmental level, which was historically the way the city did it, we believe will provide a clear and more transparent picture of how much money is being spent on each program delivered to our community. So in terms of overarching budget highlights, the budget did include, and I'm sure Chief Poos will talk about this when he has the opportunity to, ROC's coverage 7 days a week. The budget has no reductions included within. There are about 20 part-time personnel that have been added to the ROC's program to allow that to operate 7 days a week. We've included funding for 4 community cleanups, increases for respective bargaining groups, additional full-time equivalent in parks, a housing program in community development, the upstaffing of Station 5 to a full engine, city employee recognition events, overtime for Medic Squad 1 at Station 1. An HR analyst has been included for public safety, police and fire, and then obviously a new format for the budget. I'm not going to get into these items that aren't relevant to Measure U, but this is just the overarching high-level highlights that were included in the proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget. So now we'll get into the meat and potatoes. Now that we've set the stage for the committee. So we have Police Chief Poos, we've got Interim Fire Chief Phillips, Battalion Chief Myshak, Interim Public Works Director Lynn Merrill, Community Development Director HP Kang, that will provide an additional level of context as to what's included here. And we're happy to answer any questions should they come up. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and kick it over, barring Chairwoman, I don't know if you want to take any questions on what I've provided so far or wait till the end. I'm okay with doing either one.
Why don't we just see if there's any questions now? There may not be, but committee members, are there any questions for what the city manager has presented to this point?
All right, so with that being said, if it's okay, we'll go ahead and kick it off over to Chief Poos to give an overview of the police department and what they've programmed and lined up for Measure U for fiscal year 21-22.
Yeah, good afternoon, committee chair and committee members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Just, I know there's some familiar faces and some that I've seen out in the community, but haven't really spoken to. So just give you a broad overview on the upcoming budget regarding sworn personnel. We're looking at 76 total sworn positions. As of right now, we have 72 currently filled. That leaves 4 vacancies, which is will include a corporal, and I'll talk about that more in our programs, and 3 officers. And our non-sworn personnel will have a total of 39.6. When I say 0.6, those are part-time dispatcher positions that we have, and they're counted by that. So there's actually 39 total non-sworn positions. As of right now, because we added some positions, we have 8 vacancies in that area of non-sworn. And those are a public information social media officer, community service officer, executive assistant, public safety operator, and 2 public safety dispatchers. As you see here, when you look at the ongoing expenditures by programs, and this program-based budget, we divided all of our bureaus into a program to get a better understanding of each bureau, and we assign these programs to align with the council's strategic plan priorities. So we want to make sure we're in line in each program and we touch what their priorities are. With the programs for the police department, we have administration, and that's the police department administration. That also includes certain fees for attorney fees and things like that. That's why you see that large budget to include salaries. And we're also including the new non-sworn personnel, which is going to be our public information social media officer. And I'll get into that more as we highlight that after I cover all the programs. We have our K9 programs. That's all our K9s. We currently have 3 K9s, which is a bloodhound, a apprehension, and we have a gun sniffing K9 as well. And that encompasses that program, which they'll be involved in engagement, community engagements, things like that. We have our dispatch. We're a full service department. We cover our dispatch, which is our public safety communication center, covers police and fire. We have our investigations bureau, our PACT team. That's a program there. That's a task force comprised of a Hemet Police Department sergeant who oversees other task force officers from surrounding agencies. They do compliance checks on probationers, 8109 individuals, as well as parolees. We have our patrol bureau, which is that program is our largest program. That's pretty much who you see out in the street most of the time is our officers that are handling priority 1 and priority 2 calls. We have our community services bureau, which includes our school resource officers, our crisis intervention team, and to include our volunteers. We have our professional standards bureau. That's any type of complaints, internal affairs, they handle that. We have a records management that handles all the reports, paperwork that comes through the department that has to be filed with the Dean's office, handles all the reporting to the state and government. We have our special operations unit and our crisis negotiation team. That is a program in itself. Our technology services, which comprises all of our software and technology. We'll touch on some of that. We have our traffic bureau and to include our training equipment bureau program. With that being said, I want to touch on highlight a couple of enhancements that we have completed with this new program budgeting. In the administration, we have our public information and social media officer, which I refer to as our PISMO person. This position would highlight programs and pretty much provide a positive media through police department social media platforms. The main goal is to provide a positive narrative, which has been much needed direction for our businesses, our community, and our residents. This would also highlight measurable data that we get from our programs that we put out in our community regarding Measure U and what Measure U is contributing to our community for quality of life. Another program that I'd like to highlight, which is going to be an enhancement, is our ROCKS program. We're going to add an additional supervisor, which will be a corporal. That's one of those positions, and 20 part-time maintenance aid ones. They're part-time individuals that will be an extension of the ROCKS team and fully supervised by our police supervision. We are expanding that team. Currently, they work 4 days a week, 10-hour shifts, and we stagger that throughout the week to try to do coverage. But obviously, we need to do a better job and make sure that we deal with all the issues 7 days a week. So we're moving forward to expanding that team with that supervision, with those part-time maintenance aides to 7 days a week. This is a high visibility team. Obviously they aggressively address nuisance crimes, trespassing, panhandling, vandalism, and also homelessness. So those are the issues that they concentrate on. And with the addition of the 20 part-time maintenance aides, which is an extension, this 7 day week would provide graffiti abatement, assistant clearing abandoned property, that assist ROCKS cleanup, which would actually free up our ROCKS officers to actually focus on police work under the ROCKS umbrella. So it'll be a big improvement 7 days a week, which is will be a great enhancement for our ROCKS team. Another enhancement would be our traffic bureau. This is adding an additional motor officer and a community service officer to this team. This program is similar to ROCKS. Obviously they work certain periods during the week. This additional position will expand our traffic bureau to deal with daily traffic issues 7 days a week on major thoroughfares, Sanderson, Florida, Stetson, San Jacinto, and also streets throughout the city. So this will be a 7-day enforcement. They allow our motor officers to aggressively handle traffic-related matters 7 days a week. And then the CSO increase will allow our traffic officers to focus on enforcement while they deal with traffic-related issues and investigation that are past traffic collisions, things like that, not actually dealing with criminals, because this is a non-sworn position. So with that, hopefully I covered that whole program so get a better understanding how the police department is made up. I do like moving towards this program-based budgeting because it shows each bureau that we have within our department and what their specific duties and accomplishments will be.
Thank you, Chief.
So Chairwoman, if there are any questions for the chief, I'm sure he can answer those if there are any.
Okay. Committee members, are there any questions for Chief Poost?
I do want to add something. Chief, maybe you can talk about the one-time fund balance use and how that'll help supplement some of your programs.
Yes, of course. With the one-time fund balance, I'm sure you have heard at council meetings, we have a fund balance of Measure U. I'm sure Lorena will probably discuss further on what that is, but we were able to use that fund balance to add additional equipment to specific programs like our traffic bureau, using technology such as the JAMA radar. This is a system we can use to place throughout the city. And when we get a specific complaint from the neighborhood, we're able to place this item in the city, and it will allow us to understand when, what times those issues occur, and to have focus on those issues, speeding, reckless driving, things like that throughout the city, wherever we get the complaints, where we could focus our efforts in the traffic bureau on that specific area. So that's one item that we're going to be using for fund balance, to include stalker lidars. We currently have radars, and we're moving towards newer technology, which will be our stalker lidars. Will assist in enforcing those traffic issues. Other improvements will be obviously a CSO vehicle to enhance that traffic program. With the ROCKS team, we're going to purchase a power washer to assist the part-time maintenance workers and removal of graffiti, to include a trailer to remove debris and abandoned things that are left after the ROCKS team has dealt with certain issues throughout the city. This will also include some radios that we need to outfit our part-time maintenance workers, and marketing and educational material is also included in that. And that comprises pretty much everything which we have from fund balance to cover that, unless I missed anything.
Chief, this is Suzanne. I would just like to, really tell you and commend you for expanding the ROCKS team to 7 days per week. I think that's super important, along with traffic, because it seemed like, during COVID and everything, traffic just seemed to be pushed to the side. So I'm really glad to see that you're beefing that program up too. And then just one more comment. I'm surprised to see you still have Crown Vics from 2005 to 2007. I guess it is time to replace those.
Yeah, we're having a discussion about that, myself and the city manager as well. We are doing some replacements this year. For the past couple of years, we could not make those replacements due to when COVID hit. We took a step back, make sure that we could weather that storm, which we did, and that's one of the topics. And we actually have that in our budget this year to move forward with the purchase of 5 vehicles. We won't get rid of all our Crown Vics. We do very well, as you know, with the assigned vehicle program. We wouldn't have been able to weather through the recession unless we had that assigned vehicle program, which we have these Crown Vics. They're almost 20 years old, and they still work great. We get them checked out, for quarterly checks with maintenance at the city yard, and everything seems to be working properly at this time.
I have a question. We have even though everything that you're doing is very important and we need all those things, your budget is 13 million in spending, but you only have 12 million. So how are we're now over budget already?
So Lorena can explain the difference between the allocation of revenues for police and fire and then the use of fund balance.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Chief Poost? Committee members?
I don't have a question, but I wanted to thank him. Thank you for the excellent presentation and helping us understand what each of these categories includes. And it's good to hear that, you're going to be able to have some increases. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as far as the revenue and what the total expenditures are, Measure U is projected to bring in $12 million in fiscal year 21-22. And the way that Measure U resolutions are written, police is entitled to 2/3 of the revenues for their ongoing expenditures, and fire is entitled to 1/3, meaning that of the 12 million, police is entitled to 8 million, and fire is entitled to 4 million. So if you look at the table that's on the screen now, You see ongoing expenditures by program is 7,697,900. That comes out of the ongoing revenues. So that comes out of police's $8 million share of the $12 million. The amount below the 644,000 comes from the fund balance that police already had. So when we take the 7.7 million from police plus the share that the fire chief will be discussing in just a few minutes, and then some other items from Public Works and Human Resources, that makes up the $12 million. The items highlighted below in yellow are included in that total of 13.5 million, but it's use of fund balance that is already available.
There is, I mentioned earlier that previous problems that the city of Hemet got into included the use of one-time revenues for ongoing expenditures. You'll know that the use of fund balance as proposed is not for ongoing expenditures. And what I mean by that is, if we had $100,000, I would not, in fund balance, I would not recommend the hiring of, let's say, a police officer, because you've got 1 year of funding and then the funding is gone. So if you see in the staff report in the category of the yellow, those are one-time uses, which after the expenses incurred, we don't anticipate having that expenditure again. So it's one-time uses of that funding.
And Chris, I'm just looking at your report right below this. Are you going to talk about the expenditures for community development, or is that fire?
Yeah, those are coming after, but wanted to get through each piece individually.
Okay.
So if there are no other questions for Chief Poos, we can go ahead and move on to fire, if that's okay with the committee.
Very good.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cameron Phillips. I'm the interim fire chief here in Hemet. I'm relatively new, and I'd like to welcome Madam Chair and the rest of the committee members for your service and commitment to providing our guidance in this effort. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you. I have one of our battalion chiefs on the line as well. Battalion Chief Jamie Myshock. He's been pretty much real help to me with budget since my arrival here a couple months ago. And I'm going to turn over our review of the Measure U program to Chief Myshock.
All right, good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and Measure U Committee. As mentioned, my name is Jamie Myshock. I'm one of the 3 battalion chiefs here with the City of Hemet Fire Department. Just a quick overview of our fire department. We consist of 5 fire stations that are located throughout the city. We have a total of 49 sworn fire personnel, with 45 of those being firefighters, captains, and engineers, 3 battalion chiefs, and 1 fire chief. In addition to our sworn personnel, we have 1 administrative assistant, 1 office specialist that is part-time, a paramedic coordinator, an emergency service coordinator, and then we also fund 3 dispatchers and 1 call taker in the Emergency Communications Center with PD. So right there's an overview of our personnel and our fire stations here in the city of Hemet. Our programs that we developed through this new budget system, we have 5 programs that consist of administration, fire EMS operations, emergency services, fire prevention, and dispatch. Our administration program consists of the fire chief and our administrative assistants. The fire EMS operations, that's the meat and potatoes of our department here. Those are the boots on the ground Those are the people out on the front line on the engines and the battalion chiefs. We have one emergency services coordinator, and he is, originally it was a part-time position, having difficulties finding and employing a part-time emergency services coordinator. Years ago, they decided to fund the other half of that position through Measure U. So half of this position is through general fund, half through Measure U. Our fire prevention program consists of one non-sworn fire prevention specialist, and then it also includes our contract with CSG, who provides plan review and fire inspections on new construction and new businesses. So that consists of our fire prevention program. And then dispatch, as mentioned, 3 dispatchers and 1 call taker. So our ongoing total costs from Measure U of the $4 million that Finance Director Rocha told you about is $3,903,100 out of our $4 million. That's our ongoing cost that we utilize Measure U for every year. Now, with our one-time fund balance, which was mentioned before, we have proposed a use of $895,000 for that one-time fund balance. Of that $895,000, $400,000 of it is for a new training center structure and infrastructure for our fire department. This structure is a pre-made structure that is delivered to us. We have some property that we have identified over by Station 4 near the Hemet Ryan Airport. And then we also included some money for the infrastructure to place that training structure in place. We budgeted for 2 sets of extrication tools, which most commonly is known as Jaws of Life. Those are the tools that we utilize for trapped victims inside motor vehicle accidents, inside building collapses, any type of trapped victim. We utilize these specialized tools to extricate them from harm's way. And 1 set is about $35,000. We budgeted for 2 sets for just our aging equipment of replacing equipment. We also have $20,000 for an extractor cleaning system. And what these extractors are, they are used to clean our turnouts or our protective gear that we wear inside structure fires. As it's all well known that structure fires, the smoke and the contaminants contain carcinogens, which brings us to a much higher risk at developing cancer and different cancer-related illnesses. So it's very important that we have a cleaning system so that once we are removed from that incident, we can send our protective gear in to get cleaned, to get sanitized, and then back out to the membership. So then the last item we have is $400,000 for our Medic Squad 1 allotment. There was a lot of conversation about that, and we felt that the utilization of one-time fund balance to fund overtime versus hiring personnel would be a better fit in order to staff our Medic 1 squad. For those of you that are not aware, we have 5 engines, and then you may see running around town some pickup trucks, some F-250s with some lights on top of them screaming around town. Those are what we call our medic squads. Those carry 2 personnel, usually have 2 paramedics on it, and it's a light force type of a vehicle that is utilized for medical aids and other type of instances. You can imagine the cost savings that we have with these medic squads for the cost of our engines that are about $800,000 a piece, and then maintenance and fuel versus an F-250 that provides a lot of cost savings. So we allotted $400,000 in overtime to keep Medic One staffed part-time, and then utilize that fund for our Medic One squad. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be welcome to answer them.
Committee members, do you have any questions for the chief?
I don't have any questions, but thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. It is interesting. I mean, it's the first I heard that you had medics in apart from the squad. It's very interesting to know, but thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
And does anyone else have questions? Well, Chief, I do. I just wanted to, when you talked about the public safety dispatchers, are we still going forward for emergency medical dispatch? We've talked about it for 4 years.
Yes, and Chief Phillips, do you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, I've understood that that's been a goal established here in Hemet for some time. We have been looking at a program to start. I haven't really honestly dug too deep into that. I know Chief Poost has been working with some of his staff over in the dispatch center. So that's an ongoing project that we need to embark into over this next fiscal year and come up with some solutions for that. The use of EMD generally will provide about a 10% reduction in the lowest level call volume. So once we get that organized and up and running in some form, we'll be able to reduce the very high and quite honestly extreme call loading on our operational platform out there in the streets that you see. So that's a frontline project that we're going to be starting to discuss, Chairwoman.
Oh, thank you. And then I do have at least one more. I just want a clarification on the $400,000, I think it's a one-time overtime allotment for Medic Squad 1, if I said that correctly. Is that at Station 1 or is that Station 5? I'm not sure where that's located.
Yeah, so
sorry.
Medic One is located at a Station 1. So you are correct in recognizing that there is also a medic squad at Station 5. However, through the proposed budget that the city manager has presented, this fiscal year, we will be removing the medic squad from Station 5 and replacing that with the engine that was there previously. So therefore, Medic Squad 1 would be at a Station 1. However, the battalion chiefs have full authority to move that medic squad wherever we need it. If we're finding a high volume in Station 2's area, we'll move the squad to Station 2. If we have a volume at a Station 4's area, we can move it to Station 4. It's very versatile so that we can move it based on where the highest call volumes are occurring within the city.
And Chief, is that what we previously called, or maybe we're still calling it the peak demand unit? Or is that gone now?
Yes, and that's in the peak demand unit and Medic Squad 1 or Squad 1 or Medic 1, it's all the same unit. We're talking all about the same thing, just different nomenclature for the use of it. The peak demand is a theoretical concept that's peak demand. The Medic 1 squad is the actual unit.
Okay, and from what I recall from the previous chief, that peak demand unit, I'll call it, it was very successful. Is that correct?
Yes, Medic 1 is a very successful unit, not only to reduce call volume in Station 1's first due, if that's where it's located, but here in the city, we experience a high percentage of concurrent calls, meaning multiple calls going at one time. So you might have Engine 1 on a call, and then a second call comes in Station 1's first due, and so now Engine 2 is coming to Station 1's first due, and then a lot of crisscrossing with the engines. And the Medic 1 unit actually has a tremendous impact on those concurrent calls and maintaining the engines within their own districts to have the shortest amount of response time to the emergency.
Okay, thank you. And just one more for me for clarification. I think you mentioned Station 5. That's going from medic to a engine, correct? Or maybe it already has?
Yes, ma'am. In the proposed budget, it's proposed that Medic 5 is replaced with Engine 5, and a full-time, fully staffed engine will be housed out of Station 5.
And that will be a paramedic engine, as the others are.
Yes.
Chief Mishak, may I just ask for clarification? So do you still have medics on every engine? You just have this one overlying medics that drive around in the Ford F-250s to kind of cover the highest demand? Or did you move all of your medics into something like that?
No, man, you're correct in the beginning. Every engine has at least one paramedic on the engine. Engine company consists of a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter. The firefighter is also cross-trained as a paramedic. So every engine has a paramedic. Due to promotions and a lot of different reasonings, we actually have increased that to the majority of our engines have at least 2 paramedics on the engine. And then the medic squad is just a additional unit to assist with the high peak time areas and the areas of concurrent calls.
Is that 24/7?
No, it is not 24/7 at this time. It is based on the budget. We budgeted $400,000 at this time, which spread out through 365 days will average about 3.5 days per week that we would be able to staff that up. However, I know there's some more discussions that's going to go on with the city manager and the fire chief to come up with some additional staffing for that as well.
Thank you.
I have a question about, did you guys get all your new radios that were in the budget for last year? You guys put in for you needed new radios?
Yes, ma'am.
Were those all purchased, or do we still need to purchase more, or where do we stand?
All of those were purchased that were in the budget for last year. However, I think you might be speaking of the radio system itself versus just our little handheld radios. The radio system was the large dollar amount system that we replaced with PD to enhance the radio communications within the city. And I believe that is all have been completed.
Okay, and then I know that he also, Captain Brown talked about radios. You guys, we were so far behind on the radios that we were purchasing new radios for them. So that way you didn't have to roll out a truck with a EMT emergency. So that way you guys were better being able to communicate.
Yes, ma'am. We're sufficient in the amount of handheld radios that we have. We're purchasing some through other funding sources within our own system, just for wildland incidents and specialized incidents like that. But we're in really good shape with our radio.
All right, thank you.
Are there any more questions from the committee? I think we had some good questions today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to add one final thing with respect to the Medic Squad 1 overtime allotment. I liken that concept to kind of a faucet. It's easy to turn on, it's easy to turn off, but the moment we essentially control the flow of that, no personnel will be removed from operation. It's simply just an additional allocation that we can turn on. We can up staff during some of the summer months. we can downstaff, and maybe other times that it's not necessarily needed. So there's some flexibility that's created with that allocation, the use of fund balance.
I certainly don't want to see anyone laid off. Thank you.
Sure, and the reason I brought that up is because when you have permanent employees assigned to that, the moment that you've got a downturn in the economy similar to economic development, you don't upstaff all of a sudden just because you've got a specific time of high demand. You have the flexibility to upstaff on a kind of demand-driven basis.
I appreciate that. I just have a question regarding the whole budget. Is the money for the budget for the 21-22 year, was that money collected already, or are we just proposing that we think we're going to get this much money based on taxes to cover this budget?
It's a great question. I'll let Lorena answer that question.
The money for the ongoing expenditures, so the items that are listed in blue, is proposed. It's what we expect to collect in the new year. The items, the one-time use of fund balance is what's already in the bank, essentially. And we do use a consulting firm by the name of HDL who assists us in establishing those projections. They work very closely with many cities, counties within California, as well as with the state. So they have a pretty good handle on projections and are usually pretty good at telling us where they think that we're going to end up.
And maybe, Lorena, you can talk about when we get revenues to fund our operations and the waves that we've got to go through to make sure that we've got cash flow to pay for payroll.
Yeah, so sales taxes are paid, businesses pay their sales taxes mostly quarterly. Some pay estimated taxes throughout the year every month, but every quarter they true it up. So they actually look at what they collected in those last 3 months and then send the difference, if there is a difference, to the state, or do a reconciliation of it. So the city receives what are called estimated payments every month, but our fiscal year starts July 1st, ends June 30th of the following year. So the payment for the month of July doesn't come in until 2 months after that. So we don't see the payment for the month of July until September. And so with everything delayed 2 months, it takes until the end of August, sometimes, although not often, the very, very beginning of September, for us to get all of the revenues, including those true-up payments, through June 30th. So there is a delay. We have what's called pooled cash. So rather than having, we have about 57 different funds. We have the general fund, which is the general fund that we've always had, plus the Measure U. And we also have special revenue funds, DIF funds, which are development impact fee funds, funds for capital projects, and then we have internal service funds. And instead of having 57 different bank accounts to manage those, we pool our cash. So we put everything essentially together in one pot. And the accounting function is what allows us to have that cash flow because of the delays in the sales tax. We also have delays in property taxes. We don't receive a payment every month. We receive very small payments for any payments that are trickling in that are delayed or, from sale of homes or things like that. But our big payments come after property owners pay their first installment of their property taxes after December 10th. So we get it about late January, sometimes early February. And then the same thing after the April 10th payment. We usually get that early June. So we have to have cash flow, and pooled cash is what allows us to do that, as well as our reserves. We do have a 20% reserve requirement for the general fund, and Measure U has its own 20% reserve requirement. so that we can cover things like payroll until those bigger payments start coming in.
Thank you. And just another question, if I may. So if these in the blue, if the estimated, say you have a surplus or you have a deficit at the end of the time frame, how are those payments handled or the deficits handled?
Well, for Measure U, we've been very fortunate. We've had, we've always exceeded our projections in revenues. And so that goes into fund balance, and it's an accounting function, but essentially we're putting it into savings. And because of the 2/3, 1/3 split for PD and fire, we have to track that separate. So we look at total revenues, how much belongs to PD, how much belongs to fire, and of that allotment for PD, how much of it did they spend? And at the end of the year, how much was left over and it goes into the bank? With the use of one-time fund balance, obviously we take that off the top of their fund balance, and then we do our calculation for what revenues actually came in, what they actually spent for ongoing, and if there's a balance. And there has been every year until now.
So I'll add a couple things to that too. Based on I'll call it the past history of the city, there was a pattern that emerged of the city continuing to have deficits, meaning that it was continually using one-time revenues to fund ongoing expenditures. As long as I've been here, I have not provided a budget to the council that hasn't been balanced. So that's the commitment that I provided to the council. The staff understands that I will never put forward a budget that isn't balanced. And so what you'll see over the last 3 years is a deviation from the past history where you've got budgets that are balanced and budgets that don't deficit spend. So there's clearly been a difference in past practice to where we are now. So I don't think it's a surprise to the management team now, but that's just the way that I operate. I came from an agency that went through bankruptcy, so I don't plan on having that happen under my watch ever.
Thank you, Chris, for that.
Thank you. Yes, we appreciate that.
Okay, Chris, I have a comment on that. Last year, when you balanced the budget, you did take 2.4 million out of Measure U to help balance the city budget. So that money.
That's a great comment. One of the things that we had to do to balance the budget was on the non-safety side. I'll talk about that first. On the non-safety side, we made the difficult decision to implement layoffs in the non-safety side because I wasn't going to use emergency reserves to balance the budget. So what we ended up doing was we transitioned and we reprioritized Measure U funding to cover existing personnel. So yes, in lieu of having reductions made in the general fund for public safety, we use Measure U to cover existing personnel in the general fund, including police officers and firefighters. So yes, you're absolutely correct. One of the challenges that's happened is this idea that the general fund and Measure U need to be separated out. So if we would have continued with that, the end result would have been you would have had general fund reductions of police and fire, and there was no way that I was going to put forward a budget that made reductions in police or fire on the general fund when we could just use Measure U to cover those expenses. So that's the reasoning behind that, but that is the staff report that was provided to the committee last year. So in lieu of making reductions in public safety, including layoffs, we chose to just reprioritize Measure U to cover public safety in the general fund, police and fire in the general fund. So that's what we ended up doing last year.
Thank you, Mary Ann, for bringing that up. I also had a note to ask about that. And Chris, I'm not sure, was that just like a one-time transfer or?
That's correct. So you'll recall that we had a number of vacancies in the general fund as well as Measure U. So in lieu of keeping those vacancies on the books, we just funded existing personnel of public safety. So this year, there is no transfer of Measure U into the general fund to cover any of those police or fire expenditures. The council did not, as one of the first priority items for the council, they did not want to see Measure U segregated as it had been previously. And that was the reason we provided the budget as it is today.
Okay, but you are this year transferring 1.5 over into helping the budget from Measure U. I mean, I understand not wanting to keep it separate, but it does show separate when you're transferring over, and it does show like separate when you're putting up here in the green where it says one-time use fund, and then on some of the other budgets that I saw last night, there is an actual category where it does say Measure U one-time use fund, and there is money in that column. So even though we don't want to separate them, they're being put down on paper as being separated.
Committee member, I don't know where you're getting that figure from. Could you elaborate on that?
Elaborate, I'm sorry, on which part?
You said the first part was $1.5 million of Measure U for general fund.
Yeah,
Could
that's
you
being
elaborate
transferred
on that?
over. Elaborate on that. It's the what?
I don't know what committee member Darwin is referencing, so I don't have any other things to say on that.
Mary Ann, did you want to elaborate on that or?
Oh, wow, now I'm big. Okay, didn't mean to do that. Hi. Yeah, if you look in the regular budget, there is a 1.5 being used out of Measure U. Oh, thank you. Didn't mean to be so big. Hi. But yeah, it is being used.
These one-time fund balance.
Could you give me a page number so I can pull it up? I'll pull up the budget document right now. What page are you looking at?
Okay, hold on. I'm looking it up.
Chris, while Mary Ann's looking that up, are you still going to address the 60,000 for community development?
Yes, I think that's next up. We can go ahead and go to that if you'd like.
Okay, it's page 21 of 269, and that question that you just asked was part of that. On the bottom. On the bottom. One-time use of fund balance at 1.59.
Are you talking about the budget document from last night? Is that what you're referencing?
Yes.
So let me make sure I've got this. So this is the document that you're referencing, is that correct?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, so if everybody can see, it's this $1.6 million down below.
Yes.
So when we go back to the presentation side of it, let me share my screen again. The one-time use of fund balance is included here in the yellow in the presentation, and all the areas you see the yellow, that's the one-time fund balance. And so we had it for PD of 644, which is shown down below. We've got that 895 for the fire department. And then I'd like to just continue on and go to the next section to talk about HR. Community development isn't next, but you'll notice that this one isn't in yellow. So this one isn't fund balance. What this is the cost for having an HR analyst to deal with public safety. Over the time that Measure U has been implemented, there's been a big demand on HR and the human resources function. Due to the upstaffing that we are proposing for this fiscal year, we have proposed the use of Measure U to cover the cost of an HR analyst to deal with the additional workload, the new positions that have been included, and the other items with respect to public safety that HR is dealing with. It's something that we talked about, I believe, 2 years ago with the Measure U Oversight Committee. We removed it last year just because we wanted to prioritize police and fire personnel versus admin, and we knew that we weren't going to have additional staff. We just wanted to prioritize public safety, so we didn't include it last year, but we are including it in this year.
Chris, may I ask, so is this the cost of one HR analyst?
That's fully burdened, that's correct. That includes salary, that includes benefits, that includes PERS liability, that includes PERS costs, that includes everything. That's fully burdened.
Health insurance, workers' comp.
Health insurance, workers' comp. Is that it?
Any other special pays that they may be entitled to through their MOU.
Yeah. That's inclusive of all benefits. I think you'd probably be surprised at the cost of public employees when you look at all the benefits that are combined.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'll move on to the next item. Initially, the ROCKS team was included under Public Works. I believe there are one FTE as well as the respective equipment, materials for that individual. That's the cost of the personnel that's included with Public Works. That person will remain in Public Works, but as the chief alluded to earlier, the expanded coverage will be housed within the police department. So we have been proposed to include this, the additional cost, the new cost in Public Works, that'll remain in the police department.
That's not for the 20 part-time employees?
That is not. The 20 part-time employees that Chief Poos talked about are included in this slide. You'll see that the ROCKS program had a significant increase. The ROCKS program is $835,000. That's where those part-time personnel are housed.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll move on to community development. This is the question that the chairwoman had. You'll notice that this is in yellow. So this includes the use of fund balance. So the dollar amount that committee member Darrowan identified of the use of fund balance, this is the use of fund balance. This is one component of it. Earlier this year, code enforcement, code compliance expended all of its board up costs or all of its board up funds. So what we find is that when you've got a vacant property that is not boarded up and the property owner has failed to maintain that property, it becomes a issue of blight. It becomes an issue of potential vagrancy, illicit activity. and it also potentially becomes a source of fires. And so we found that when we don't take this type of action to prevent people from getting in, then it costs, there are higher costs downstream. So we are proposing the use of fund balance of $60,000 to be used by community development for board up costs. Now you'll notice that in the proposed budget that Chief Poos talked about, there was some non-sworn CSO positions that were in, one in particular that was included there. There will be some synergies created with the use of PD non-sworn folks and code compliance to ensure that they are both on the same page and attacking problems from multiple different angles. And so this in particular is the cost for additional board ups that we are proposing. On a broader note, broader schedule, we are undertaking some work to revamp the code compliance program and working with legal, PD, community development to see what can be what can be done to either increase our cost recovery so that this funding hopefully gets put back into the Measure U fund balance, or that we're doing whatever we can to ensure that these properties don't become blighted properties and become an eyesore for the community.
Chris, are we passing this cost down to the property owner?
Yeah, so that was a question that came up last night. And that's essentially what I think legal, code enforcement, code compliance had a conversation today about what those options are. But it is something that we're looking at cost recovery in terms of making sure that the city isn't just bearing the cost of this. But we're also looking at what else can be done, whether we recover that at a later date using the utilization of liens or different processes like that. We are revamping that now. Having a new city attorney on board is allowing us to look at things differently and get new fresh eyes on what we do.
That was my question also, was about cost recovery. And if in fact that is established, if the funds would go back to the Measure U fund balance. And the 60,000, is that, because it's not broken down, is that for personnel and materials?
That's just the cost, I believe, for a contractor to do the work.
Oh, for a contractor. So it's as needed, then I take it.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't know. I thought that seemed rather high, but especially if the economy's, recovering, hopefully we won't need that many, but.
Yeah, this is one of those instances where we get property owners sometimes that don't take responsibility of what is their responsibility. And in the attempt to not bring down a neighborhood or have additional downstream impacts, we try and take action to alleviate this issue on the front side. But obviously, if the property owner isn't taking responsibility, you can imagine that our recovery of fees on this is, more downstream.
Yes, I do. I understand.
I have a comment on that when there's a chance.
Oh, I was just going to say, maybe you could bring this back to us sometime if this program is actually established, the cost recovery.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Is that the chief, or I'm not sure who had a comment?
I think that was Committee Member Clark, I think.
Oh, okay. I don't see him anymore.
I'm kind of here.
Okay.
This is a big concern for me because in the past, my wife and I have had discussions with city employees, and we've asked, why aren't we automatically putting a lien on these properties if we can't get the property owner to take care of it? And very truthfully, the answer was, it's too much of a hassle. Are these property owners being cited at that time? I mean, if we're going to pay, and I know, I mean, I'm still remodeling on my house and plywood's gone up to almost $200 a sheet. But if we're going to pay a separate contractor to go out and board up somebody's place, are we tracking down, if they're still in the United States or in this area, are we still tracking down the property owner and citing them at that point? Or do we need municipal code to follow that up?
Yeah, so a couple items, and I'll leave this broadly. We are currently evaluating all the processes that code enforcement, code compliance does go through. So the instances where we can improve something, of course, we're going to improve something. I don't have the specific instance that you're referencing. I don't know what instance you're referencing, but it is something that we're currently working with community development as well as legal to really provide our officers with all the tools, with all the processes they need to do things properly, because there's no reason why the city needs to take this on its own expense and not recover its costs. So all I can say is that it's something that we're looking at right now. And as a matter of fact, I think community development met with legal earlier today to follow up on some of these items. So I do think there's probably an opportunity to improve, and that's what we're working towards.
Is there any, I know you and I have talked, and I've talked to a lot of people out in the community about my belief. And is there any movement towards moving code enforcement directly under, and I'm sorry, Chief, under the police department, so that we can get more immediate action toward the offenders?
Not at this time. Like I said, I think the first step is understanding the process and making sure that the process is squared away. Just moving a perceived problem to a different location doesn't immediately solve the issue. Part of it is having the good legal foundation to ensure that all the tools are provided to the team to move forward on this. So that's the first part of it. So it's not something that is being considered at this moment. The second part of that becomes we've got 3 code enforcement officers, code compliance officers under the city. I think it's the same amount that is in a neighboring city that's probably, you know, a 5th of our size or a 6th of our size. So the reality of it is we can't have this shotgun approach in deploying resources as it relates to code compliance. It's got to be strategic, and it's got to be with the purpose in mind. So the thought that they're just going to go out there and deal with falling paint chips off of someone's property, probably not the best use of their time. So we're really looking at revamping just how they're deployed out in the community. So it's part of a broader overarching strategy, but I can say that your concerns dovetail really nicely with what the council has talked about during the strategic planning sessions, and it is on our radar. That's why it was included in the strategic plan as an item to address.
Well, my personal opinion is that a move of the problem, as you put it, to another location wouldn't be a change. I know from 25 years as a cop that the training, the expectancy of the officers' professionalism and handling of things would be increased and made better with a movement into either under the umbrella of the fire department or the police department. And whether it's inside or outside of this committee, I will be very vocal in pushing for that. I have friends who have worked for other cities who have rewritten their code enforcement manual, and that manual is being used not only up and down this state, but on the whole West Coast. And we need to get something consistent there. My 2 cents.
Are there any other comments from the committee members?
So If there are no others, I believe that's the last of the operational departments that will be utilizing Measure U funds. Total Measure U expenditures for ongoing items, additional requests for fiscal year 21-22, including fund balance expenditures, total $13.5 million. For public safety, the Measure U estimated fund balance at the end of this fiscal year is projected to be $10 million. This incorporates projected revenues for the remainder of this fiscal year and the projected expenditures that end out fiscal year 2020.
I may be incorrect, but I think that the fund balance is about plus 3.58 million from last year.
No, I believe it's actually a decrease.
Mhm.
The use of fund balance the previous year for one-time expenditures will end up, they occurred in this fiscal year. When we talked about them a year ago, we anticipated the use of fund balance would decline or decrease the fund balance available because of those one-time purchases. I think at the end of fiscal year 19-20, we had about $13 million of fund balance available.
Mhm.
And so you'll see that at the end of this year, we've decreased that by about 3.5.
No, minus. Okay. I'm sorry, Marianne, did you get an answer to your question?
About what? About using the 1.5
yes,
as transfer over? Well, not really, but I mean, the general fund resources are 55.2 and the general fund uses are going to be 56.7. So in order to balance that, we're going to transfer over some money again, like we did last year, to be able to make it balance. I mean, I'm all for balancing it, I am, but better use in our money that we already have. I know we've been working on a skeleton crew here for about 5 years now, and we're finally seeing the light thanks to Mr. Lopez, and they do an outstanding job. However, you know, to say that we don't use Measure U money to help us out in other areas is, I mean, we do, let's face it, we do. And so in order to balance the budget, you know, if that's where it has to come from, I mean, you got to pull it from somewhere, right? But let's be honest about it, that's where it's coming from. So just on all of that, I mean, I go to a lot more meetings. I probably know a little bit more insight, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I'm glad to see that we're actually using less this year than we did last year. So it's a step in the right direction. Let's put it that way. So.
but I believe it's still for public safety, correct? I didn't see that page. I mean, I did see it when Chris put it up, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's all going to be under the general of public safety. It is, and I'm not saying that's not what we don't need. I mean, we just purchased 6 police motorcycles, which is awesome, and I see them by my house, and I see them tagging people every day. We needed it. Those are the kind of things that I would like to see it go towards, which is what it is. But let's also be realistic on where it is also, you know, having to be spent other places so we can balance out poor spending from years past. And that's what we're doing. And so hopefully eventually we won't have to do it. You know, it'll all balance out itself, because let's think about it. In 8 years, you know, they only voted this in for 10 years. And in about, you know, 7 to 8 years, this 1% sales tax is going to be gone unless they vote for it again.
I think it's
so we
about
won't have that to fall back on.
2027.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to provide clarity on a couple items. This is the actual table that committee member Darrowin brought up. And just so that everybody understands that the budget is balanced. If you look at the total general fund resources, that is your total general fund revenues for the city of Hemet, coming in at $55.2 million, 55.3. If you go to the table below, that includes the estimated expenditures for the city of Hemet. If you remove the one-time expenditures, which we went over earlier today, and you compare that with your estimated revenues that are coming in, you'll see that we actually have a surplus there. So I'm sorry if you have to do the math on your side, but if you take $56.7 million, you subtract $1.6 million of one-time fund balance, which is shown in the table below, you'll get the total expenses outside of one-time fund balance, and you'll see that the budget is balanced. The one-time use of fund balance is essentially to enhance and make some of those capital purchases that have been included in the budget. Lorena, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, and just to be clear, that the one-time uses aren't a transfer. It's the items that are allocated to police and fire Measure U costs, not general fund costs, Measure U costs. So when it has been like in last year's budget, where it was to support and to avoid having to lay off public safety employees, it was shown as in support of general fund, but it's not shown that way in this year's because it's not that. It's one-time use of Measure U fund balance for Measure U costs of equipment.
So, Chair, I'd like to go back to the presentation and wrap up the presentation here. As I mentioned, $13.5 million total expenditures for Measure U. As next steps, concluding remarks, and I'm a broken record, a portion of Measure U funds is proposed to fund one-time expenditures for public safety. It's important to note that ongoing expenditures programmed using one-time revenues is one of the main reasons the city experienced ongoing budget deficits. As a matter of practice, ongoing expenditures are not programmed into one-time revenues, as this is not a recommended management practice, and I won't be providing budgets to the council that do that. In terms of the next steps for the committee, as the city attorney mentioned, the Citizens Oversight Committee was established to independently review and advise upon the city's expenditure of proceeds generated by the transactions and use tax. The committee shall meet at least twice each calendar year and more frequently if necessary to discharge the responsibilities of the committee. So the section that we're all here for today is to annually review and report on the section that's in bold and underlined. The city's proposed expenditures, proposed and actual expenditure proceeds generated by the transaction and use tax, and 2, the independent annual audit required under this article. Obviously, this isn't the audit because we're talking about proposed expenditures. Typically, the committee has reported and provided a letter to the council talking about whether they've determined that the expenditures, proposed expenditures are within public safety and within the ordinance that has been included, which I believe is 1908 or 1918, one of the two. 1918.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be made available to the council at least 5 business days prior to that public meeting. And then finally, this is a copy of the letter that was provided to the city council last year, where we provided the overview of the proposed expenditures, and the committee then provides a letter to the city council summarizing their conclusions and any lasting remarks that they may have. In previous discussions, the committee has authorized the chair and the vice chair to sign on behalf of the committee, but that's just a past practice that's been done before. And so with that, that concludes our presentation for the proposed Measure U expenditures for fiscal year 21-22. happy to answer any questions or provide more clarity.
Committee, are there any comments or recommendations? I would like to say the letter that we prepared last year was basically exceptional because of the pandemic and the use of the 2.4 million, et cetera. So in the past, we've prepared, you know, letters that weren't quite that detailed. But it depends on, you know, what the committee's pleasure is.
I mean, is that a decision that has to be made today, right now? Of how detailed the letter will be, or?
We probably won't be meeting for, is that right, Chris, for a few months?
Unless there's another meeting that needs to get done between now and you know, the end of this week. I don't know if the committee needs more detail on the proposed expenditures. That's really the determination to be made by the committee, whether the proposed expenditures reconcile with ordinance 1918 and the accompanying resolution. So that's really the discussion that should be held with the committee members today.
And may I
I'd like-
also, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
May I
Go
just
ahead.
also ask, I know it's related to our committee, but not maybe to this, regarding the seventh member who's not in attendance today, you know, because if we're going to be doing a vote, I'm just wondering about that seventh committee member.
I believe that committee member resigned and he's no longer on the committee. The clerk can confirm that.
Yes, that is correct.
So essentially we have six then, 6 members currently.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly willing to assist with drafting a letter, but it's up to the committee if you're comfortable with the proposed expenditures as presented by the city manager.
I'm comfortable with the proposal.
As am I.
So am
Yeah,
I.
I like the flavor of the letter. And then Suzanne and I know that that normally the chair and the co-chair have advised, have put in this letter together with the assistance of the city manager. And if there was anything that was questionable or that they knew they wanted to get clarification on, you know, it was possible to either have a short meeting, which we've had some short meetings, or you know, calls to members. And I like that process. It's worked for us. And both styles of letters have worked.
I'm comfortable with them both writing the letter and both signing the letter.
I'm good with it.
We need to actually make a motion.
Yeah, Chair, and if the motion could include the findings from the committee so that we're all clear and the committee is clear on what the findings of the committee were, whether the proposed expenditures were in line with measuring your resolutions and whether they are in line with being public safety expenditures for the upcoming fiscal year. I think those two things would help us draft the letter. And then if the committee wishes to have the chair and the vice chair sign it, we can work with the chair and the vice chair to include all of those specific items that the committee has agreed upon before we kind of run off in a specific direction. So if that can be articulated, whatever that position is, we would appreciate that.
We have a motion to prepare a letter that basically stating that the proposed expenditures are in line with ordinance 1918 and are to be spent on public safety enhancement or in public safety.
Yes, I move for that.
And I'll second.
Thank you.
And then one final thing is to whether the committee would like to authorize the chair and the vice chair to sign, or who's going to sign on behalf of the committee.
I would like to motion that the chair and the co-chair draft a letter and sign the letter on behalf of the committee.
And I second.
City Clerk, do you do a roll call at this point?
Yes, just one moment. I'm writing as fast as I possibly can.
Thank you.
Can I get the second one more time?
I think it was Committee Member Clark.
Clark, for the second motion.
Oh, that's Committee Member Chenault.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So I heard two motions and I just want to be clear. You offered up basically an amendment to the first motion. Is the first motion maker okay with that, which was motion by Thames?
I think we were motioning two different things.
Okay, so we'll take them both as different motions. The first motion would be to request that staff request that the chair and vice chair draft a letter approving the proposed budget that is aligned with the strategic plan delivered by the city manager. And then we could do a roll call, which the motion was made by Thames and the second by Clark. And we'll start with the roll call.
Well, I believe it should be that the proposed expenditures for Measure U are in line with Ordinance 1918. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay.
And Chris, in the past, some staff member from the city has drafted something and sent it to us. But
Yeah, we can take the lead. However the preference is with the committee, we're happy to do it. Or if the chair would prefer to do it, whatever the committee's preference is.
I think if committee member, if Ms. Cosma would prefer the letter for you guys to write the letter, because that's historically how it's been done and it's been drafted well, then I would be comfortable with that. And then she and the co-chair can sign it.
Committee member Clark, are you okay with that amendment to the motion?
Yes.
Okay, with that said, the motion by Thames, second by Clark, and then starting a roll call. Committee member Chenault,
Yes.
committee member Clark,
Yes.
committee member Cortez de Pavon,
Yes.
committee member Duran,
Yes.
committee member, Chair Cosma,
yes,
committee member Thames.
Yes.
That motion passes. And then we're going to go to the second motion, which was requesting that it's signed. The letter that's to be drafted by the city staff is signed by the vice chair and chair. The motion was made by Thames. The second was by Chenault. We'll go through a roll call. Committee member Chenault,
Yes.
committee member Clark,
Yes.
vice chair Cortez de Pavon,
Yes.
committee member Duran,
Yes.
chair Cosma,
yes.
committee member Thames.
Yes.
That motion passes as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, committee members.
Housekeeping question? Mr. City Manager, a housekeeping question?
Sure, committee member.
When can we unplug Zoom and have our meetings together?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're grappling that with almost all of our committees. We're waiting on guidance to come through with respect to Cal OSHA. I don't know that they've finalized that because although it's great to have members of the public together, there are requirements for employers when it comes to that. So it's still in the works. I know that I think the governor unleashed his unveiling of the free California, whatever that means. But we're still working through it. I mean, we have questions on our side too, because, some of our employees, we have to be mindful about, the associations and the unions that we have here and be sensitive to the fact that some members are more inclined to not have individuals from the outside that may not be vaccinated interfacing with employees. So we're in a very unique situation. I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't right now.
Okay.
But I heard you loud and clear.
Are we ready to go to number 9? Well, maybe we just did that, committee member comments. And I do agree with committee member Clark. I would love to meet in person and meet everyone, and I'm looking forward to it. Are there any other committee comments?
I have a question regarding the 7th committee member. What would be the next steps, or does that committee member get replaced?
So I'm going to limit you to like 5 good questions each meeting. No, in all seriousness, the council is actually taking up council protocols on what to do when there are vacancies that occur on these types of committees and commissions and other boards. So I'm anticipating that in the next few weeks, the council will take that up. And this will be one of the committees that will be impacted by that. So I should be having more direction, formalized direction in the next 3 weeks.
And just on that note, we have to be careful then about the city attorney said 4, members should not be together, I guess, talking about Measure U. So we've got to be careful that the majority would be 3, I believe.
I don't know about you all, but I've had to like designate a cave to go into so I don't basically talk to anybody.
Guess we're gonna skip those summer barbecues.
Yeah.
I say future agenda items, number 10. I think you already mentioned the agreed upon procedures would be brought back to us in the future, along with the year-end financial reports, which we don't normally get those till, I believe, October. And at some point, I would certainly like to hear updates. We did hear some updates today from police and fire, but typically we have had updates from the police and fire chiefs.
I'd also like to know if we're gonna also do an audit of the Measure U.
That's what the AUP is, basically. Agreed upon procedures. It's a separate, well, I better let finance talk about that. Sorry.
Yes, that is what the AUP is. It's an agreed upon procedures, and what the agreed upon procedures essentially say is that the auditors come in and they test the expenditures within the police Measure U and fire Measure U, as well as the revenues. And the revenues, they always confirm with the state. It's not what we give them, it's what the state shows that they sent the city. And they pull, they take a sampling, so they pull any invoices that that are requested. We provide them everything that they need. The last 2 AUPs that they performed, they did not have any findings. They did not have any concerns. They expressed satisfaction in that we were doing a very good job of separating those costs.
I will add a couple things too, is that there's actually 2 documents that get reviewed by the committee. The first one is the financial annual report that's done by 1 independent auditor. And then we actually have a second independent auditor that then reviews the Measure U side of it. So starting in fiscal year 1920, we actually made a change to actually do a more detailed breakdown and analysis of Measure U revenues and expenditures in the annual financial report. And that document is probably close to 300 pages. I can't say that it's necessarily fun for everybody, but for some people, for some finance people, it's really fun.
It is.
I like them too. So that's one financial report that you'll receive. And then the second one is the AUP that's a lot smaller. It's about 15 pages or so that does just an agreed upon procedures review just for Measure U as an added level of transparency and an added level of review for the committee and the public. And the previous two versions can be found online too.
Thank you.
Do we have an estimated month or time when we might receive those?
So I'll provide just very preliminary information. We just selected a new auditing firm. They won't drill down until the fiscal year is all the way completed. And so we're not there yet. But I'll have Loretta can provide more detail on when those dates are that we get a draft back or we get an idea of what those numbers are looking like.
So the auditors come out physically to perform audit procedures twice a year. They come at the or near the end of the fiscal year, whether it's May or June, and they were actually just here last week. And they do what's called preliminary work or interim work, where they review our internal controls and making sure that we are booking things properly, that we have proper procedures in place, that we have proper policies in place, that we have proper separation of duties. So no one employee is ever accepting a payment, sending it to the bank, and posting it into our books per se. It's all different employees doing that, and they do some review of some of our invoices, expenditures, payroll, things like that. Then after the year closes, we have 60 days to accrue things or to get, to kind of catch up the invoices that come in for items through June 30th, but that we didn't get the invoices in, as well as things like those sales tax revenues that come in delayed by 2 months. So we do have a 60-day accrual period, and it does take time to close the books. The actual full audit of the citywide audit of all transactions, or the sampling of the transactions, is usually done in October. By October, we can provide you preliminary year-end numbers, and historically those numbers have not changed for Measure U, but there is always the chance that something can change if we were to find that a transaction was missed or posted incorrectly or anything like that, or if the auditors were to recommend a change in a transaction the way it was posted. But again, that's not happened in the history of Measure U. So preliminary numbers can be provided in October. Realistically, your true complete audit would not be able to be provided to the committee until likely January or February of next year.
Okay. So we perhaps will have a meeting in October for the preliminary year-end numbers, like I think we've had in the past, but I know we probably are not going to schedule that today.
That's correct.
Okay, so our next meeting is to be determined, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, with that said, unless there's anything else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Just one other future thing.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to know what the determination or the process is still going on when we come back of how we can recoup these monies that we're taking care of for other owners.
We'll provide an update at the next meeting about that.
The cost recovery.
I think it's an important item to note because the committee is interested in making sure that, that money is recouped as well as the interests of the city. So that's an easy update we can provide at the next meeting.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
I just want to say thank you for, it's great meeting you all, and thank you to Mr. Lopez. You did an excellent presentation. You had a lot of information in there. I'll probably have a lot of questions, but I know some of you are experienced on this committee, and so I'm not sure outside of, a meeting in this forum how, to ask questions, but it was excellently presented today, and thank you all.
Thank you. Even though a couple of us have been on the committee, it's still a learning process continually. So I think everyone should, ask any questions that you have, including myself and and Dick Clark.
And we'll twist city manager's arm if he tries to keep you to 5 good questions.
Committee member, that was just a joke. You know how many questions everyone asks. But I have one final thing to say too. If there's any questions that ever come up for any of the committee members, feel free to reach out to me, shoot me an email, whatever it is, just reach out to me. I'm happy to sit down with individuals. I've got an open door policy with employees and members of the community. So my door is always open. My cell phone is always on. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk individually or just provide more context or detail. Happy to do that. It's part of my job.
Thank you. And I would like to also commend you on the budget from last night and the goals and objectives for the council. I mean, the documents were so well put together. I really appreciated looking at them. Thank you.
Definitely a team effort. So I'll send the kudos to the team too.
Oh, definitely.
Sorry you had to hear a repeat of some of the stuff I talked about last night.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay.
Hearing no nay, is there a consensus by all members to adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
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 Hearing no nays, that motion passes to adjourn the meeting.
See you later. Take care.
Everybody have a great week.
Back to the grandkids. Bye.
Bye-bye.
There we go. That was good.